Hey, good afternoon. How's it going? Happy 1 o'clock.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Spectacular. I am awesome. Thank you very much for asking. And so let's get right down to it. So today is really all about objection handling. And so I want to be clear that objection handling and objection handlers are two slightly different things, right? The objection handler are just kind of the words that work, at least the words that work most of the time, because let's just be clear, there's nothing that works 100% of the time. So if you're here for that magic solution to X, you will likely leave disappointed. I have not yet discovered, nor I think is it discoverable, the magic bullet, the magic solution that answers the question the same way every single time, always successfully. However, the words that work are words that work because they oftentimes that they work more times than not. And the idea of objection handlers being the words that actually work and objection handling being two slightly different things is this. Objection handling is the whole package, is the whole idea of how do we move from point A to point B if something kind of pops up in our way. And some of that is going to include the expectation setting up front. And I want to just preface this conversation before we get into your specifics, right? Because I will look to see. I don't have. I can show you. Look, nothing on the desk. Zilch, nada. I don't have an agenda for today. I'm not going to teach you, here are the 6 best seller objection handlers, and here are the 6 best buyer objection handlers. The whole idea of today is to work with each of you to say, okay, well, what are you hearing in the field? What's getting in the way? Where are the obstacles? What are people saying that you struggle with? And how can we kind of help you struggle less? The other side of that is, what do you think people might say, even though no one's actually said it to you yet? What do you think people might say so we can prepare you for answers to some of those objections that live in your head? They might actually exist in real life, but oftentimes they live in your head, and that's preventing you from making the call or saying the words or closing the deal or whatever. So that's kind of the path we're headed down. And let me just take another half step back. Where I started to go before was sometimes the answer to when someone says this, like, what's the next step? How do we move them forward? Sometimes the answer is, in that scenario, what you really need to have done is set different expectations over here, and then this would never have happened. And yet what I find is oftentimes in an objection handling or objection handler session like we have today, people think that's like a cop-out answer. That's like me saying, well, I don't really know what to say, so let's talk about expectation setting. So to be clear, a lot of what we'll talk about today can be resolved before it's ever even asked if you will set different and clearer expectations up front with your buyers and your sellers. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I have always noticed when we go to family reunion or we go to mega camp, right, and we're seeing top tier agents on a panel at the front of the room talking about handling objections. And inevitably, someone in the room will say, well, what do you say when the seller says they don't want to pay that much money? And I'm always fascinated that the people on the panel, when it comes to commission objection handlers, are always a little bit stuck. Like they're kind of looking around saying, I'm not, do you have one for that? Do you have one for that? And it's not because they're not prepared. It's not because they're not top agents. It's not because they're kind of goofing around. It's because they've elevated their performance by offering a powerful value proposition and setting really clear expectations about that meeting up front, that they just don't get asked those questions anymore. And that has nothing to do with years in the business, just by the way. Nothing to do with that. It has to do with creating and delivering a powerful value proposition and setting clear expectations with your sellers up front. So having all that being said, again, I don't want you to give me a bad report at the end saying, oh, he didn't really answer any questions because he just kept saying, well, you know, what's your value proposition? What are the, how are you setting expectations? And yet a lot of times that in our conversation in the next 54 minutes or so, I'm going to point you back to that. I want us to recognize that so many objections we bring upon ourselves. They don't necessarily have to show up in our world. And so we complicate the process by not being clear up front. The last thing I'll say is I also want, for those of you who have ideas, this is not about me answering the questions. It's about us all kind of working together to brainstorm through ideas around how to get somebody from where they are to the finish line. So if you have other thoughts, or if you've used something successfully in the past and want to contribute that, I will count on you to pop in on the other side. So with that, who brought something they want to be sure that they get some answers to? Just go ahead and either raise your digital hand or unmute and I'll call on you. Dana, why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, I haven't had the objection yet, but I'm having a pre-listing meeting tomorrow. And I know upfront that it's a house that's under renovation and they're not certain when it will be completed because they're having supply chain issues with certain critical things like their garage doors that should have arrived a couple months ago, still haven't arrived, those kinds of things. And subcontractors that are not coming when they need them. So it could be still, I'm going to say a few months out into the future, maybe even up to 6 months out into the future before the house is completed and ready to put on the market. So I guess my, I don't know if I could say objection, but dilemma maybe is better, is getting them, assuming all goes right and we hit it off and they really like me a lot at the second meeting when we discussed price, getting them to sign on the dotted line for listing because it's going to be out into the future some months. And then, you know, like how do you get people to the table on something like that when it's going to be out into the future by several months when the house couldn't be marketed?
Got it. All right, so what I'm hearing is there's a property that is not quite ready for the market, and yet we still want to secure that listing, even though we may have some time in between securing the listing and having it go live.
Yeah, exactly, because it'd be a great. I'd love to have the listing on this one.
Yeah. So I'll kick that off, and one of the things I learned from a guy named Rick Jiha, who's a mega agent out in Northern California, is the concept of not letting any grass grow, right? Because too much stuff can happen if you let grass grow. And here's what I mean by that. So, you know, Dana calls me and says, hey, you know, Rick, I just got your postcard in the mail and, you know, thanks for checking in with me. I think I am going to be listing a property at some point in the next couple of months, but there's work that has to be done, and I'm just not sure exactly when we will be ready. Awesome! I'm so glad you called. We have so much work to do between now and then. Let's set up an appointment to get that all started, right? So the answer is always let's meet. Just from the starting line, the answer is always let's meet. The good news is Dana's already got that in play, right? And she's at the let's meet stage. Think about the things that can be done in the interim that would be a benefit to the seller. Anybody want to help me start making a list? Because there are things that can be done from February 15th through May 15th when the house is actually ready to go live on the market that would be a benefit to the seller. What are those things?
Well, my first thing would be doing a market analysis so they can know where, if it was on today, where it would stand, even though you let them know that in a few months it could be a different price. Yes,
so certainly, and the remember, if we don't have a a number, a price in the contract, it's not really a valid contract. So we'd have to do that, knowing that we may have to look at it again in a couple of months because the market's constantly changing. Frankly, you may have to look at it in a few weeks, right? Just depending on the market and the price range. What else? John, what did you have?
I said decluttering.
Yeah, so one of the benefits that they could that could show up for them is once the contract is signed, we then have a checklist to give them, right? A house preparation checklist to give them that says, okay, so here's your task over the course of the next couple of weeks or months. Here's the decluttering. Here's a outside maintenance thing. And if you need help gathering people to get this work done, let me know. So I love the whole home staging thing. More time just means the home will be more ready. So if they're doing work, well, is the whole house under construction, or is it just the kitchen, right? So could they be working on other parts of the house to clean out closets and get things, get the basement all ready, the garage, painted or whatever. So I love the idea of kind of finishing it for the market. What else?
Rick, this is Christy. I'm sorry my video is not on, but a couple of things that I noticed on some listings that I brought clients to see is, with the challenges around COVID and not getting the materials in and time and everything, they were still, these properties were still listed, but with just letting the listing, said that, the garage door is ordered and will be in at, whatever time. But I guess depending on what actually needs to be done, why can't the property be listed like now?
So it may be able to, and we're gonna get there, Christy. Hold that thought just a few more minutes.
Okay.
Because the answer is that is certainly possible. What other benefits are there for the seller if in fact you're going to wait? What other benefits are there to the seller to have that listing contract signed and be ready and waiting for the house to be ready to go on the market? Frank.
Coming soon.
Although,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, even though we're not marketing it, but just intra-office, we may have a buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of being able to push that in office, right, in case we could find somebody who either is interested in seeing the property up front prior to it going live, right? Because then if that's the case, then we have additional paperwork to be doing, right? To make sure that we're in compliance with the MLS rules, we need to have that withheld from the MLS form in place. But then you can actually broadcast it into the office. Frankly, if you're withholding it from the MLS and it's at least 30 days out from being on the MLS, then that withheld issue is kind of a no-brainer, right? Remember, when you sign withheld paperwork, you can't put it on the market for 30 days.
Can you keep it off the market for longer than 30 days?
100%.
So however long you want, but
Yep.
that allows you then to send a blast to at the market center saying, I have this listing coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Right. And so
If you
you're
send that-
you're
sorry.
building some momentum around all of that. What
Mhm.
else can you do with so Mara, you had a thought, and Julie, I think I saw you as well.
I was gonna say the same as Frank, to send it out to everybody in the
Yeah.
office. That was same thought.
Absolutely. And again, why is that a benefit to the seller? Right? So the seller is now getting exposure before the actual marketing of it to either find a buyer up front so they don't have to actually have people trouncing through their house,
Yeah.
right? Or now, contrary to what many of you may think, there are sellers out there who, if they can dictate the price and terms and someone is found without it actually going wide, are more than happy not to have it go wide, right? There are some who want the competition and want things to be kind of chaotic and multiple offers. And there are some who would rather shove a pencil in their eyeball before before actually having that experience. And so remember, ask questions, be consultative, and make sure that you're asking what the seller actually wants.
If you do the withhold from MLS, can potential buyers come into the house or not?
Yeah,
And-
absolutely. Withheld
you
from
can-
MLS, you're free to do whatever it is you want.
Okay,
Full marketing, full whatever.
it's just not MLS. Okay.
Julie, did you have a question?
I did. Can you market that to outside agents other than KW? Can you send it to everyone or no?
Yeah, if it's withheld from the MLS, you can do whatever it is you want.
So other agents outside.
Full
everything.
marketing. You can post it on
Okay.
social media if you want.
wow.
You can do whatever you want withheld from MLS.
So that's like a pocket listing is what it becomes, basically. Is that what that is?
Well, no,
Or is the
So-
pocket listing a different term? I just don't know the
yeah,
definition.
a pocket listing is really something that you have in your pocket that nobody really knows about, right? Pocket listing came from the idea that, okay, I'm going to take this listing, I'm going to shop it around myself to all my builders and my database, and I'm going to find the buyer for myself and double-side it. All these new rules over the last couple of years for the MLS about clear cooperation and the time frame to get properties on the market and coming soons and withheld and delayed, all that stuff stemmed from the fact that the DCP and the MLSs thought that pocket listings were not in the seller's best interest because it did not drive competition, right? And so if your seller says, I don't want the competition, I want it off the MLS and I want to do it this way, right? Then we're all good with that. John Mendez.
Sorry, for all like the newer people, what is like withheld and delayed?
So for these purposes, I'll answer the question as it relates to withheld. When you have a property that the seller decides not to put on the MLS, there's a secondary form that has to go along with the exclusive right to list seller contract. That is a withheld from the MLS contract. That document that everybody signs, including me, that says we understand all the rules around it. The seller understands that they're not getting the benefit of the MLS, and they've chosen to go ahead and do that. And when you do that, you are then required to keep it off the MLS for at least 30 days before the seller can change their mind and put it on. But when it's withheld from the MLS, you can do whatever it is you so choose. You have full marketing capabilities, unlike coming soons and delays where there are some rules around that. Alice.
Another option possibly would be to have them list it now and give the potential purchaser or the buyers a credit for the items that have not been received to complete the renovation.
Yeah, so let's go down that path, right? Because Christy and Alice both went to that same place of, well, what if you didn't wait? What if you put it on now anyway? And either outlined credits for the things that weren't going to be done, or just popped in there. Look, the garage doors are back ordered and they'll be here in 6 weeks. We'll keep some money in escrow. If you're going to close before they come in, we'll keep some money in escrow just to make sure everything happens properly. Here's our signed agreement with the garage door people, right? And then the attorneys will kind of creep in and make sure everything is copacetic on the back end. But certainly there are options or opportunities for the listing to go on anyway. That's going to.
Excuse me, was that something you put in the language on the listing that about the garage doors or whatever else that hasn't arrived yet, being done before the closing or whatever?
Yeah, I would use the remarks for that or any kind of agent remarks depending on what it is you're saying. But yeah, just be clear that this is going on. We understand that these things have to be done, and here is our plan, right? And then the plan can be part of the negotiations. One of the benefits about that for a seller is they get to experience the market today and not the market 4 or 5 or 6 months from now, because we don't know what the market will be 4 or 5 or 6 months from now. So that's a pro. A con could be that buyers could show up and say, okay, I wasn't interested in, I'm not interested in spending this much money and I'm buying a house that feels like it needs work, right? Sometimes people can't see past the stuff or well, what do you mean they're going to be new and they just haven't come in yet. right? It can create some confusion. So there are pros and cons to that approach, right? Are there any other benefits that you can see to talk with the seller about signing today and going on later?
That they get all your fiduciary duties and you're gonna be there 100%.
Yeah, well, and so the idea of hiring me sooner allows me, I think a benefit to the seller is, look, it gives both of us plenty of time to do this and do this at a really high level and get everything done correctly. We're not racing against the clock, where all of a sudden now it's like, okay, we need to be on the market by Thursday and it's now Monday afternoon. How are we getting photographers in there? How are we getting this done? How are we getting that done? So we can take our time and be ready. Right? With something off the market, you could ultimately tease it out on social media, gather a whole bunch of buyers, and then see what the seller wants to do. Do they want to entertain them? Do they want to hold them until they're more ready? Maybe once you gather those buyers, then you go back to the whole group of them to say, hey, look, so the reason we're not out wide yet is because of this, this, and this. We've got these three things that are back ordered. Is that something that is going to be problematic for you? And you line up showings anyway with the people who say, no, we get it. We understand. Right. The sellers today are in more of a position to call the shots. So if you're going to be doing stuff like that, now's the time to be doing that. When the market flips, is that Chris Ferguson at Don Doyle's house? It is. Hello, Chris Ferguson at Don Doyle's house. So does that make sense? Sorry, I got distracted. Chris was distraction.
Yeah, no, this is very helpful.
He was like my squirrel.
This has
Michelle.
been very helpful.
I have a question, actually I have two questions, but I'll ask one and so other people can, and then I can come back to it. But commission structure, when people are intimating that there'll be somebody else that will give them a lower commission, I have in some of the training seen people say that, you know, they offer tiered commissions to their clients, so the client gets to choose. I'm not sure how to put something like that together and then use that to get over the objection of, well, so-and-so is less. Like, I think there's value to offering them a choice, but I'm not quite sure how to populate what those levels are, what they look like, and then to use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
So I have a sheet that I can email you actually, that I have with the
Yeah,
tiers.
I was going to say something. Both Jen and Margaret Kozlock have sheets outlining the different levels of commission. That's probably what Mara has, one of those
Yes,
that she got from them a while ago.
yeah, I used it for my listing that's coming up, that's what we're using.
Yeah, Michelle, are you in productivity coaching?
I am. I have the one from Margaret, but I have to be honest with you. I even made it look pretty. Like I see, I can't say, I guess it's too blurry, but I honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure that I see a big difference between 5%, 6%, and 7%, but maybe that's not a conversation for this objection. I just feel like people are very cost conscious. I have a friend who got her house in Darien, and the only reason, I mean, she was very honest. She's like, I picked her, Michelle, because she went down to 4% and she could have cared less what was in it.
All right, so let's talk about commission in just a moment. I want to make sure that the conversation around listing property, even though you're not putting it on the market immediately, it was finished, because I thought there was one. I thought I saw one more hand, but then it went down. Are we finished with that conversation? Going once, going twice. Okay, so let's then pivot to commission. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys are experiencing in the field. I sign all the listing agreements, so you can't lie. I know what you're taking, right? And so the idea of of listing commissions. What have you seen? What have you been experiencing over the course of the last 12 to 18 months?
So,
Okay, Mayor Pat.
I was gonna say, I definitely think sellers seeing a busy market have more interest in, even though they're gonna be getting more for their property, there is more interest in, oh, this is gonna sell quick, so shouldn't I be able to do it for less? So I see myself explaining this last year or so, more so the commission, the structure of commission and where it all goes to, even though they seem to know it. But there is in some sellers' heads, this market, it seems to them, they should be getting a discount because, oh, it's gonna go quick.
Well, and I love what you just said, because it's reality, right? And it's what we're experiencing. And the task at hand is to help sellers understand why that may not be in their best interest. Now, remember, I started this whole conversation by saying there is nothing that works 100% of the time. So please don't tell me when I say these things, no, I had one that wouldn't have worked for. Of course you did. So have I, right? There's always somebody that we can point to, but these are, generally speaking, concepts that when you work on them, you'll have a better understanding and clarity around how to have commission conversations that you can then take to sellers in general. And every once in a while, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to work for less, right? There's no objection handler for commission that works 100% of the time that has every single seller say, oh, now I understand and I should pay you more. That doesn't exist, right? That's just, I'd love to be able to give you those words, but they don't exist. So to Mary Pat's point, one of the things that you have to get real clarity around, especially in a fast-moving seller's market, right, is what your value is. So I'm going to start with why we get hired, right? The concept of it will sell fast, therefore I want to pay less, when you really understand you and your value and why you get hired, actually doesn't make any sense, right? The sellers are definitely peddling that, but it doesn't really make any sense. Why? Anyone answer that?
I think it's because you're getting penalized for doing a great job.
Also,
Well, so let's explore that a second, Robert. So yes, that may be true. However, the seller doesn't care if you're getting penalized, right? So you've got to come at it from, because that's how you're seeing it. That's not how the seller is seeing it. Because the seller is kind of like, you know what, take your penalty or don't. I don't care. I'll just list with somebody else, right? Unless something shows up. What has to show up for them to start paying attention to the number as it relates to you?
You, an amazing listing presentation, what you're going to give to them, and how you're going to be better than any other agent.
Yeah, your value prop. And again, like I said in the beginning, I know that sometimes is like an eye-rolling worthy answer. And yet what I have learned over time is that it kind of is the answer. It's if sellers understand that you are not hired to type and push a button on the MLS, right? How do we create multiple offers in a market moving this fast? We just list it, right? We just put it on the market. That has nothing to do with me. The only thing, it has a little to do with me in that I'm the one who brought the data to the table to help you decide the number to stick on it, right? And we all know that marketing is 90% price and 10% everything else. So finding a buyer, if that's what you're hiring me for, you should probably just do it yourself. Right? Like if that's what you're hiring me for, that's a script I use with sellers a lot. It sounds to me like there may be a miscommunication about my value and what I bring to the table. Right? Anybody can put the house on the market and find buyers. That's not what you're hiring me for. What you're hiring me for is to navigate all the multiple offers so that you can actually single out the best qualified buyer with the best terms. And if that happens to also be the best price, then awesome. The best terms to get you to a closing. Because my understanding is that you want to actually sell this house, not just list the house. And those are two different things. And they're two different goalposts. Anyone can get you to this one. My expertise lies in helping you troubleshoot and get you from accepted offer to the actual closing table. That's why you need me. And that's why I cost more, because that's my expertise. Like I said, anybody can just put you on the market and find some buyers. How hard is that? Any of you take a listing lately? How hard is that? It's not. Right, so there's a disconnect between what sellers think our job is and where our expertise we have to focus our expertise. Why wouldn't, if all they wanted was someone who could find a faster buyer, why wouldn't we just encourage them to put it on the market themselves? They can do that themselves. They don't need us for that. Stick a sign in the yard. Post it for sale by owner on Zillow. You'll get people. The reason you're talking to me is because I have an expertise in getting you the best buyer and then getting that best buyer to the closing table. And that costs X when you hire me. You see how you may have to explain the difference between somebody who puts the property on the market and collects buyers and somebody who actually gets somebody to a closing table. We're being hired for two different things. And that's not clear to most sellers, right? Fast isn't the issue today.
I didn't even realize I was getting that objection when I'm thinking about a meeting I had with a client who said in passing, well, it's your job to find me the best buyer. And I wish I had said something now. I didn't, but I wish I had.
Right? And the reality is that's not part of the job. But the conversation that Michelle is talking about is, you know what, you're 100% right. However, that's actually a really small part of the job. Finding the best buyer is kind of like foundational real estate 101. You could literally spin the wheel of licensees in the state. Doesn't matter who you land on. Anybody can do that for you, especially in today's market. John.
I'm gonna say one thing that I seen. My girlfriend, her grandma sold her house last year in New Jersey, and I was brand new, but I kind of knew a little bit more about real estate. She was like, "Yeah, John, why don't you come just in case I have any questions?" So I went with them, and the listing agent there, he had like a 5, 6, 7 structure, and we ended up negotiating like a 5.5. But like some of the things that he offered on like the higher percentage points were like a YouTube video, a website for that property, 3D virtual, whatever. What else? I can't remember the rest, but those are some of the things that stuck to my mind.
Yeah. So I will tell you that for me personally, I'm not a massive fan of the tiered structure, right? And here's why. I think for some sellers, it might create some comfort saying I have a choice. However, for a lot of sellers, it creates confusion, right? And what I've also seen is that for some real estate agents who are actually offering the tiered system, it creates confusion for them. They don't understand their own program well enough to be able to sit and have a real clear conversation around it. So my thought was, the way I worked it was I built a value proposition that took all those things that were extra, that seemed like extra, and I built that into my standard program and just charged 6% for it. And then if I had to start negotiating, right, which happens like all the time, There were a whole lot of conversations I had that 6% was 6%. There were a whole lot of conversations I had that 6%. People were like, well, I'm not paying you that. Like, well, let's talk about it. And for me, it was always another question. I'm curious, based on the program that we've laid out for you, what would you expect to pay for service at that level? What were you expecting? Because a lot of times, if you don't ask a question about what they were expecting, what number makes sense for you? Where would you go to sign on the dotted line? Now you're just negotiating against yourself. You know you're here, but you don't know where they are, right? And so the seller says, well, I was thinking more like, 4.5%. Got it. I understand. Talk to me about what it is you're attempting to achieve. Well, what do you mean? Well, it sounds like money is important. And so I'm assuming that money to you means kind of the bottom line. Yes. Well, yeah, but what do you mean by that? Well, what I mean is, are you looking to hire the least expensive realtor, or are you looking to net the most money possible? Because those are oftentimes two different things. Oh, well, I guess I'm looking to net the most money possible. Great. You would be okay if we did some math together. Right? And then you sit and you do some math. Remember, this isn't an argument and it's not contentious. It's you being in partnership, you still sitting on the same side of the table as someone, because you know that you're the best person for the job. And so now it's just a matter of, okay, I'm going to get hired. Now you just have to figure out what you're going to pay me.
And then to follow up that question, I really do appreciate the insight. How did that value prop sound starting off, like when you were fresh in your career?
Meaning what was in it?
That sort of until if like you get the objection of, okay, you're talking about service or whatever, XYZ, it's like, where's your testimonials or something like that? And like you're talking about, the level of service, and I'm an expert in getting qualified buyers from the, offer acceptance stage to the closing table. How do you navigate those conversations when you were like new in the business?
Yeah, so one of the things I did was, I can't remember where I found it. And I can likely try and locate it again if you guys are interested in it, but I had a sheet that listed, like, I can't remember, it was like 79 different things or 119 different things that I actually did from the offer stage to the closing stage, right? So when the question came up, we just kind of haul that stuff around and say, well, maybe this would be helpful, right? Here are all the things that we're tasked with doing to guarantee that the person that says yes to you actually is the same person at the closing table, right? And we hit all the targets in between. And so did you want to maybe review that and kind of ask questions through that? Or did you want me to kind of review that with you? And because it's so long, nobody really wants to ever review it, but the point has been made, like, oh, okay, like, I don't just wake up in the morning and make a care call to see how things are going and go back to sleep and hope for the best. There's a process here that bam, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. We've got 9 jillion things that we've got to get through. So I would on purpose show the seller prospect exactly what the process was, which now in writing all of a sudden had people saying, oh, wow, like that's a lot. Does that answer the question, John? I think I was answering the question you asked.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure, is that one of like the anatomy of a seller thing that is in the power sessions from Ignite?
It's sort of that. It's not that. I might have built the anatomy of a seller transaction from some of those old days forms. I'll have to look and see if I can locate one of those. Again, I'm happy to share it if I can find it. If not, we can sit down one day. We're all just meet in the office and sit and brainstorm. Like, what are the 119 things that we do from start to finish, right? And we'll just have that document if I can't find one, because it's a powerful document, I think. Frank.
I was going to say, going back to the conversation of our job is to find the best buyer or multiple buyers. Part of that is selling the property to other agents, right? Competing agents. And how are we going to do that when most agents that cut down their commission, where are they cutting it? They're cutting it on the buyer agent side, right? So are we attracting more buyers by cutting down the buyer agent commission, or are we detracting because the buyer agent is going to go to other properties that are paying the 3% or 2.5% instead of the 2%, right? I think that's an argument, not argument, but a rationale that you use in explaining not cutting down the commission.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the idea of what are you willing to give up, right? So if you're paying a discount commission, right? Again, if your choice is I'm looking for now I will tell you this, you can decide that I'm lying or not. I can tell you I'm not. Asking the question, are you interested in hiring the least expensive realtor or netting the most money possible? There were some times where people would say to me, well, we're looking for the least expensive realtor. And my answer to that was, oh my goodness, you know what? I am so sorry. I am not your guy. I'm not the least expensive realtor. I am the guy to hire if you want to net the most money possible. And we can talk about that. I have some statistics if you'd like to see my numbers versus the market, or my team and I's number versus the market, right? So if you don't have your own numbers, you go to Market Center numbers, my team and I, right? We've talked about that. Here are the numbers my team and I have with regards to list to sale ratio and days on market versus the market, which is our competitors. And so I'm curious, would it make sense for you to hire me knowing that our list to sale ratio is 1.5% higher than what the market is currently receiving? Does putting an extra 1.5% in your pocket justify the extra percent or so that I'm asking for? I'm kind of paying for myself, and you still get an extra 0.5% in your pocket. Or, hey, maybe we look at some of those stats to say, you know what, we list at on average, you know, at 0.75% higher. Because we list 0.75% higher, I'm willing to split that 0.75% with you, which means I'll subtract 0.375% from my 6% listing, which means by hiring me, you still get to benefit by almost 0.5%, and pay me for the program that actually accomplishes that. See how you can kind of use stats to help you negotiate some of the numbers? The other conversation becomes, you know what, so this program is what this program is, and the results that I look to promise my clients come from this program. I'm curious, if you're looking to pay less, which pieces of this program would you like me to remove? Which parts of what I do to create value at a high level and bring that level of service and expertise to get you to the closing table? Which of those would you like me to remove? Frankly, I'm not comfortable kind of saying we should not do this or not do that, because kind of, again, the program is the program and it creates the results. So I'd look to you to say, well, don't do this, that, or the other thing. Just know that when we just like taking pieces off of a car, if we take the wrong pieces off, the car doesn't function. The car won't go. And then where are we? You may be paying less, but we're not actually getting to a closing table. I'm curious, is that really a benefit to you? I don't know, you have to make that decision. You know, a lot of what we're talking about has nothing to do with commission, because it's not really a commission issue. And it's not even really a value proposition issue. It's a lead generation issue. Because if you were lead generating at a high enough level and had enough seller appointments, you would take a different approach to the commission that you would accept. I've lived it both ways. I can tell you that's 100% true. I've lived in the world where every single listing felt like it might be my last. And if I didn't take that one, where was I going to, get money to pay my bills? I have lived in that world. And guess what? In that scenario, I was far more anxious to have the conversation because it felt like I was giving stuff away, and yet the conversation showed up way more times. And what was I going to say? Well, how could I say no? I need the business, so I'll just work for less. Versus lead generating at a high enough level where, you know what, would I like to take every single listing that comes my way? Certainly. And yet I didn't feel like it was a necessity. That allows you to take a firmer stand on what you're worth and be hired by the people who see that worth. It also allows you to take a firmer stand on not working for jerks. Just by the way. Because sometimes you meet people and you're like, ugh, this is going to be a long 3 months with this one. Yikes. Well, what if you just chose to lead generate it at a high enough level that you didn't have to tolerate the jerks? Now, going all the way back to Michelle's initial question, there are some circumstances and some people who any and all of these conversations will fall on deaf ears, and they will hire the cheapest realtor, right? And that's okay. You then just have to decide as a business owner whether that's going to be you or not. And I don't say that with judgment, because there are a lot of times where I made a decision to negotiate. I made a decision to cave. There were a whole lot of times I didn't, and yet there were a whole lot of times I did. It doesn't make you a bad real estate agent. I just want you to be armed with a value proposition, expectation setting conversations, and objection handlers, such that it's your decision, that you don't feel forced into it. You should want to work for that person, because you know what? I think I told you a story recently where I can't remember, it might have been in Ignite, where Debbie and I met with somebody in our office, and then they left and said, okay, so thank you so much. And we tried to close them over and over and over again. They were just like, nope, we're going across the street to Prudential, and we're going to go and talk to that one, and then we'll call you. And we're like, tell us some more about that, what, and we boiled it all down to commission. It's like, okay, other than commission, are you ready to hire us? Yes. Okay, great. So let's just handle that, so you don't have to waste your time going across the street. Nope, I'm going across the street. Okay, great. So we literally watched her. We watched her walk down our stairs, across the street to Prudential, into Prudential. She had a meeting, and 45 minutes later, she walked back across the street and came up our stairs and said, all right, she's willing to do it for 4.5. I like you better. Will you do it for 4.5? And we did a little dance all over again, and zippy-doo, and oh, well, a lot of the objection handlers, I'm curious, did you have to work hard to have her offer that 4.5%? And she said, no. We said, oh man, see, that's part of our concern. If she was willing to give away her own money so fast, how can you guarantee that she won't just cave on your equity in your negotiations? Should give away your money even faster. All of those things. And she basically said, look, part of the reason I like you is because you're willing to fight for what you believe in. And my hope is that you're going to fight that hard for the sale of my house. However, I am to a point where I'm going to list across the street at 4.5, or I'm going to list with you at 4.5, and it's your choice. Tell me what you'd like. And we didn't have a lot of inventory. We needed more signs out there. So we said, sign here. We're happy to do it for 4.5%, right? Because our circumstances drove the decision. Had we had tons of inventory and we're like, you know what? Do I really want to work for less money? That might have happened differently, but it was February, and we were short on inventory, and so we just made a decision to say yes. Again,
did you start, had you offered her a percentage? Like, did she go across the street knowing what yours was?
Oh yeah. We were 6% people, so our contracts.
You were 6.
Yep.
Okay, so you came down 1.5.
Yep. In that scenario, we did. Now, normally, a 6% negotiation would end us minimally at 5 or something in between 5 and 6, which we then still thought was a win, right? So if you start at 6 and they want 4.5, what if we just split the difference? Well, now we're at, 5 and whatever. Right, so you when you're starting from a higher number, and the reason people don't start from a higher number is because they think that people will see that higher number and just automatically shut you down. No, I won't list with you. If you have a valuable enough value proposition, you don't get shut down. You get asked a question. Frankly, if you have a valuable enough value proposition, people just sign your document at the higher number. Because the whole idea, and Mara said this before she left, is you've got to show up and just be the one. You have to show them that you're the one. Let me ask you this. Do you think that sellers really want to interview multiple agents and have to sit through that conversation over and over and over again?
No.
Oh my goodness, no way. They'd rather take a pen and shove it in both of their eyeballs, right? However, what our industry has decided is that that's kind of the norm. And so therefore we have to be prepared to have all these different agents come through. Well, what if you just showed up as the one and you walked in the door and they were like, okay. Where have you been all my life? So here's my question to you. What is your value proposition? What is your level of confidence? What is your expectation setting? What does your listing consultation have to look like such that from the first moment they contact you to the moment that you show up in person, and then through that consultation, they're just kind of like, wow, okay, she sounds different. This is not what I expected. Do we need to see anybody out? Like, how are you wowing them? Because so much of this conversation that we're having, it all just goes away if you'll build a value proposition that sets you apart as the one. For me personally, I found great success in finding things that people thought were cool and were a benefit, including them in what I did, not as an add-on, not as a, well, at this tier you get more. Nope. My bottom level, only level experience was you get all of these things, because the way I sold that was all of these things contribute to the 10% of finding you the best buyer that is marketing related. And then the rest of them, the home warranty I would pay for, the pre-inspection I would pay for, the staging consult I would pay for, all that stuff were all benefits to the seller, because they would either make more because their home would be staged, or they'd be protected from inspection items if they had the home warranty, or right. And so it was kind of like taking care of all the marketing stuff and then building benefits into the value proposition such that people felt like there were some belts and suspenders when they hired me. And guess what? Most of the time they're willing to pay for it. Pretty pictures and flyers and video and all that stuff. To me, that's all. Everybody does that, and everyone should do it. It's all foundational. It's why marketing is such a loser of a foundational value proposition conversation. Because everybody can do it. Not everybody does do it, and yet everybody can do it. Right? So what I used to say to people was, again, you want to know the dirty little secret in real estate? The dirty little secret is that we all do the same stuff. From a marketing perspective, we all do the same stuff. If that's what you're using to make your decision, don't make your decision based on that. Do it yourself. Don't hire a real estate agent. I'll tell you who we use. I'll give you the vendors. Go and do it yourself. That's not why you're hiring me. And you're not hiring me to find you a buyer. Your price and the internet does that all by itself. No, you don't need me for that either. What you need me for is the expertise I have in getting you from an accepted offer to the closing table. That's my value. And for that, in addition to all the other stuff that most people think is important, that costs this much money. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that I used that successfully for a really long time.
Love it. That's great.
We need that script.
Yeah, I'm happy to write it down for you. I think it's yeah, it exists somewhere. I have typed it out before and given that out. I'm happy to do it again. I will make that note and send it out. It's kind of, it's a winner. Go ahead, Barbara.
I like that inclusion of the home warranty. I really like that. And sometimes when I come down 0.5% lower, I'm thinking about the buyers coming in that I miss out on. So I
What
don't
do you
know
mean by that?
how, well, it's like I'm missing out on the opportunity to have all these buyers come through if I don't take the listing for 0.5% lower.
Got it.
So
Yeah,
I'm
so
thinking, maybe it's worth it, to make that concession.
yeah. Yeah, and I again, this understand, I'm not sitting here today saying don't negotiate your commission. I'm not saying that, right? Because that's the dumbest thing that anyone could ever say when you think about it, right? It's simply not, it's not real life. Real life to me though is not assuming that you have to negotiate your commission, right? Those are two different things. When you walk into a scenario and just assume that you're going to get negotiated down, you're probably in the 70%, right? What we know is 70% of all sellers across the country call and see only one real estate agent. That's a NAR statistic. That's not my statistic, that's NAR. 70% of home sellers speak to only one agent. So if you always find yourself in competition, that means you're in the 30% bucket. You've got to get out of the 30% bucket and into the 70% bucket, right? And the only way you do that is to grow and build a database and make sure that you're communicating with that database consistently and showing them value so that when someone either themselves or that they know needs to conduct a real estate transaction, you're the first person they think of. That's how you get out of the 30% bucket, right? And into the 70% bucket. So please don't think, if your experience has been, I fight for every listing because there's competition, that's a bucket that you've chosen to be in. You have to choose to be in the other bucket. Because the industry says that you're fighting twice as many times as you probably should be. Again, just based on NAR statistics. Make sense? Our brains are nutty things. They can do such brilliant things for us, and they can push us down a path of like helplessness and oh man, woe is me. I'm always fighting for my listing appointments, and then when I do, then I get negotiated down on commission. Will the madness never end? The answer is sure it will. It's just up to you to end it, right? You have to make some different choices. And when you choose to end it, that's when it ends. Or else you just get stuck in the non-best practice vortex of real estate. Let's just keep spinning. Let's just keep spinning. And every once in a while, I'll get lucky, right? And take a listing. And has this been helpful at all? Or have we just kind of rambled on for 30 minutes about commission?
No, it's helpful.
Very helpful.
Well, good.
It's been very helpful.
I don't
Tammy?
sell real estate and I found it helpful.
Well, because all people who are salespeople have the same issue, right? How do I show up as the one? That's the question you have to answer. You just have to show up as the one. And for anyone who was in my session the other day where I said that there are lots of things that I will tolerate, but never having seen the original Matrix movie is not one of them. You know where that comes from, right? Because you just have to be the one. And if you've seen that movie, you know what being the one is all about.
Karen and I are used to automatically assuming, and I'm sure Karen can agree, but we always assume they have already spoken to 2 or 3 other people by the time they get to us. So it's just the way it is. So we have just adapt to that quickly. So you guys should just assume they've already spoke to 2 other people, and now you're the one they're going to pick.
Yeah, just close.
We're always renegotiating, always,
Right.
every deal.
Just close. And here's the other thing. I know we're out of time, but I'm gonna for anyone who wants to stay over. Here's the other thing I would say is remember that consultative selling is not about talking. It's about listening. Consultative selling is about asking really great questions and having the seller answer those questions and come up with the solutions for themselves. And what a lot of you make the mistake of doing is going and doing a presentation, right? If I never hear the term listing presentation again, that would be just okay. That would be fine with me. Because when you are doing a listing presentation, you're doing all the talking. You need to be focused on doing a listing consultation, which puts you in the seat of building a partnership, sounding different than competitors if you are in the 30% bucket. Excuse me, if you're in the 70%, if you're in the 30% bucket, and recognizing that when you ask questions, the sellers then come up with the best and fastest solutions. If you're the one who's in front of them, having them come up with the best and fastest solutions, well, who do you think they give credit to for that? Remember, every human being wants to look good and be right, right? Those are the 2 things that every human has in common. They want to look good and be right. And what I mean by look good is look good in front of other people. So if you can help your seller look good and be right in terms of this whole consult by asking great questions that lead them to giving the right answers, well, you're now the one who helped them feel like they were looking good and being right. That makes them feel good. You're sitting in front of them. You close. They feel good. They feel good because of you. Why would they say no? That's been my experience. Just be the one, and be the one confidently. Right? You've heard me say this before. Confidence is key. Confidence is key, right? You know how they say dogs can smell fear? Well, so can sellers. So can
Rick,
sellers.
I know we've gone over, so
Yeah.
I don't know if we have to end, and I don't know if anybody else has any more objections they want to talk about, but I would love from the more seasoned agents that are still left on here, what to tell my one listing possibility I have right now is they're worried about where to go. And they're really concerned about that. They're down in Westport. They're definitely gonna have equity on their property. I've done the listing, and I did say the listing presentation. So, okay, I'm shifting. I did a listing consultation. And they're gonna buy. They want to buy in Rowayton, but they're very concerned that they're not gonna know where to go. So if anybody has that objection, it would be useful.
Yeah, let's stay on and just kind of throw those out. Who's using what? Go ahead, John.
So I actually haven't used it in person yet, but I got this scripts from one of the scripts call that I'm on every morning. And pretty much what you do is find out how much they bought the home for. Then you find out how much you're probably going to sell it for. And then you get that number difference, which is most likely a probably big number depending on how long they stayed in the home. And then throw in different options like, would it be worth finding a place to rent for 1 to 2 months or 3 months or something like that? For example, if they have over $100,000 in equity, what's 3 months renting? You know, stuff like that. Are you willing to wait? Are you willing to negotiate a deal that has a contingency on the sale of your home currently or something like that? That's 2 of the scripts that the second one I learned from Rick himself. But the first one I got from the script call.
Yeah, I love the idea of helping them understand what kind of equity they're working with by selling this house now. Right, if they're the key to this whole conversation is you have to help them understand that we're looking. You have to buy them time, right? because what they feel like they don't have is time to find the right home, to find the home that they want to actually move to because of the market. And they may be right, right? So again, don't hear this conversation as, well, there'll always be a house. Because one of the things I used to say to my sellers all the time was, you know what, here's the thing. A lot of this is a leap of faith. And I've never had a seller be homeless, and I don't expect to start with you. It is still a leap of faith, except I can no longer say never had a seller be homeless, right? Because in the last 18 to 24 months, many of you, right, have had sellers where they really just wasn't the inventory that made sense for them to purchase. And so we've had transactions not move forward because of those contingencies, and we've had homes come off the market, right? It's just a reality of the marketplace right now. However, the ideas of renting, here's what's real. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to put your house on the market right now to maximize the benefits of a seller's market, you can't also have a buyer's market when you become the buyer at the exact same time, right? It doesn't work that way. That's like having your cake and eating it too. That doesn't work that way. So one of the options, and the other thing you also can't have is an extra $100,000 in your pocket and convenience. So you have to decide. And how are you going to show up from the perspective of what am I willing to do to bank that extra 100K? Are you willing to rent for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year? Are you willing to live with family? Are you willing to, did you always want to buy an RV and travel the country? Well, you're going to make an extra $100,000. Go do that now. And by the time you come back from your cross-country trek, the market may be different and you may have a better opportunity to find faster inventory. Did you ever want to live, rent a New York apartment for 6 months and live in the city? Well, what if you did that now? Right? Some of your folks still work in the city. Right? So that becomes even more attractive. Maybe somebody does a reverse commute back home, or it saves them time, effort, and money on a commute. Maybe they wanted to go and travel Europe or backpack through Europe, or if they're not 19 anymore, drive through Europe or train through Europe, right? Do the things that you always wanted to do. Talk to them about their dreams, because now may be an opportunity to go and take a detour and do that. It's not unrealistic to think that people would be okay taking some kind of left-hand turn rather than I'm going to put my house on the market and find my next house, right? That's a very linear way of thinking, and it won't work for everybody. And yet, what if we encourage people by asking them great questions and offering them options to sort of start thinking non-linearly? A lot of those options can start to kind of percolate and say, that kind of makes sense. I am willing to do that. How do we set that up? Where do we go from there?
And Rick,
Yeah.
with like options that now exist, like Airbnbs and VRBO houses, a person can rent a place without feeling like they have to be locked into a year-long lease. So if this way, then when they do find something they want to buy, they have that freedom to go and put the offer in, because they're not locked into a lease if they go that route.
100%, right? See, that to me is the kind of convenience we need to be helping them see. That's convenient. The idea that you can rent without having necessarily a big year-long lease and then jump when the time is right. That's convenient, rather than us focusing on the inconvenience of them being renters for a period of time. Because that's where most of us go. Oh, who would want to do that? Remember, just because you wouldn't want to do that doesn't mean that your clients will think that's a bad idea. Don't project your own feelings about taking a trip or being a renter for a certain period of time onto other people. Offer that as an option to put that extra $100,000 in their pocket. Because that's probably what we're talking about across the board right now, right? On average, you're talking about an extra 75 or $100,000 in your pocket. But that window is short-lived. Does that help, Michelle?
Yes, sorry, I don't know why the video won't work, but it does. They know that they've got a lot of equity, and ironically, we already have talked through them going to their summer house in Massachusetts, which is not winterized, so they can't get there till May. And then they want to take a 3-month trip through Nevada, but they're just nervous. And I've said, I'm your girl, I'm your concierge. Like, I will be here working hard for you. We're going to get you something fabulous. And I gave them the spectrum, worst case scenario, literally the worst, which isn't a bad thing, would be you come back from this amazing summer and fall trip and you rent, and you could be renting until a house is finished. Maybe we found you a house and you're going to want some work done, or maybe, we're just waiting for another closing. And the best case scenario is while you're gone, I have it all set up for you. And I've talked them through like storing their items. I said, I've got experience in being able to help you pack a pod that's like apartment worthy, like we'll get those items so that no matter what happens when you come back, we've got a pod but they're just very nervous about, the whole thing. It just feels overwhelming to them.
Sure. Well, and here's the good news is nerves, that's just part of the game, right?
Mhm.
So the good news is take that nervous energy and use it as positive energy, because it's all the same, right? Nervousness is just excitement translated differently by our brains. So let's take that nervousness and turn it into excitement. What's the worst case scenario? You rent for a little while longer, right? It's not like there's never going to be a house ever again, right? And so helping people recognize that that we're not dealing in absolutes. I remember a long time ago, I was taken to lunch by a mortgage person. And I mean, a really, really long time ago. And I was sitting and going over the menu, and they were kind of talking to me, and I was distracted by the menu because we were in this place that, I'm not the easiest of eaters. I'm a little bit of a picky eater, and I certainly was 20 years ago a worse picky eater than I am today. And so I'm looking at this menu thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to eat? I don't see anything on here that I will eat. And so I was so hyper-focused on trying to find myself something to eat. The person across the table from me said, like, are you okay? And I said, oh yeah, I'm fine. They said, don't worry, this is not the last time you're ever going to eat. And I've never forgotten that statement, right? I wasn't concerned that it was the last time I was going to eat. I was concerned that I couldn't find anything, but it translated as, I had to make the best right decision right then and there because it was the very last time I was going to eat. So we have to just help people recognize that there's no wrong decision. There's no bad decision, right? And people who are a little bit more risk averse, you'll struggle a little bit more on that. People who kind of like the linear thinking, well, why would we do that? When you sell a house, you buy a house. That's just the way it goes. Well,
we're now at the point where they're considering, I'm hoping this week I'm going to do a buyer consultation with them, because they're in the position that it looks like they could potentially buy first, and then they would feel more comfortable to then sell. But the tax consequences came up, and I have not really nailed an answer for them other than saying, hopefully you have an accountant that you can run this past. But
that's the only answer, by the way, on that.
Okay.
That is the only answer. If they're talking about taxes, you send them to their accountant. If they're talking about legal contracts, you send them to their attorney. You want real estate conversations? I'm your girl. But all those other ones, we got to send them to the professionals. Don't get into my.
Is it though? I'm sorry. Is it a tax consequence though? Like they were talking about, the whole 1031 proposition, right? Because if they had their first house and that was they were still paying the mortgage on it, and then they bought a second house. So this is still a real estate question. And now they close on the second house. So now they have two first houses in a sense, right? So is it a 1031 issue? But so then they
15.
So your 1031s are my understanding of 1031 is that it's not valid for your primary residence, right? So there shouldn't be a conversation being had around 1031s. But again, that's where I say to you, is it a real estate related question? Yes, it's a real estate related question that's perfect for their accountant to answer, because 1031 exchanges 1031 is a tax law code, and the accountant will be able to translate whether or not they have any issues. My understanding is that if with a primary residence, you shouldn't be having conversations around 1031 exchanges.
But if you
They'd have to ask their accountant whether or not buying first and then selling, does the nets from a capital gains from your primary residence,
Right.
does the net of all of that still work the same? And that is a perfect question for their accountant. Or might there be some issues there? I don't think they're going to have an issue. I don't think the order in which you do that is necessarily a concern. But again, they should check with their accountant on that.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I felt very inadequate at that moment.
Yeah, well, and so let's end on this because I do have to move to a call. So let's end on this. Recognize that your expertise it is in real estate process. Never feel like saying, you know what, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer 100%. Let's get your accountant on the phone and ask that. Makes you inadequate in any way. What it does is it makes you a professional, because professionals know what they know and know what they don't know, and they're smart enough to know the difference, right? And so if you don't know something, saying, great question, I don't know the answer to that, however I know where to find it, that's what your clients are looking for. It's impossible for you to know everything, and so don't feel I don't know everything. I don't know the exact answer to the question that Michelle asked about the 1031. You know why? Because I don't take up 1031 stuff in my brain. I'd rather have someone go to an expert on 1031s or their accountant on that, right? You can ask me questions about mortgages. I don't know the answers to those because I have Karen for that. I ask Karen. She takes up her brain space, right, with the mortgage stuff. I don't have room for that. So I'm not interested in knowing that to a T. I'd rather go to my expert partners and ask them. So never feel like you have to know it all, because that's a little bit of a trap. I hope that helps. All right, guys, that's what we have time for. If there are some more questions, pop them in the chat. Well, actually, I'm turning this off, so don't pop them in the chat. Send them to me via text or email, and I'll be happy to get them answered in the next 24 hours or so. I hope this was helpful. I hope it's what you were expecting, and if so, we can kind of put more of these on and just kind of brainstorm through some of these issues that you're experiencing, and get you over the hump of some of them whenever we can. All
Yes,
right.
thank you very much.
Sure thing. Have fun.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow,
Rick.
9 a.m.
Thank you, Rick.
Sure thing.